The words slipped out of Samantha's glossy lips like venom. "I'm going to leave you with nothing, you useless old hag." She leaned so close I could smell her perfume sharp and artificial. I smiled sweetly, lifted my phone and said loudly, "Your Honor, may I play a video of her from last night?" Judge Morrison raised a brow. The courtroom hushed, and Samantha's face drained of color. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of power return. "My name is Dorothy Mitchell, though most people call me Dot. I'm 68 years old, and until 8 months ago I thought I knew my daughter-in-law. Turns out I didn't know her at all. 3 days earlier, I had been sitting in this same courthouse, listening to Samantha's lawyer paint me as some conniving old woman who had manipulated her dying son into rewriting his will. According to her lawsuit, I'd coerced Michael into leaving me his house, his savings, even his life insurance policy. The gall of that woman, dressed in the same black designer dress she had worn to his funeral, dabbing crocodile tears like she'd perfected grief as a performance art. And I suppose she had. Samantha had spent 20 years in pharmaceutical sales, mastering the art of selling things people didn't need. Now she was selling herself as a grieving widow, and 12 jurors were hanging on every word. But there are some advantages to being 68. You learn to see through masks. My radar had been buzzing for months before Michael's accident. I just hadn't pieced it all together. The hearing we were attending wasn't even the trial yet. It was simply to decide if Samantha's challenge of the will had enough standing to move forward. She needed to convince the court that I had manipulated Michael, that he wasn't in his right mind when he changed his estate plan just weeks before he died. What she didn't know was that I had insurance of my own, not the kind written on paper, but the kind recorded in pixels and saved on hard drives. The phone call that changed everything came at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. I remember staring at the glowing red numbers on my nightstand, debating whether the pain in my chest was indigestion or something worse. The voice on the line was young, steady, too calm for the words it delivered. "Officer Bradley." "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm sorry to inform you. My boy, my Michael, was gone. A semi-truck had run a red light. He was killed instantly." The funny thing about tragedy is how the mind rejects it at first. Not my Michael. He had been careful, cautious to a fault. Always the seatbelt, never a drink before driving. The type to double-check the oil before a road trip. Yet here I was, clutching the phone as the world I knew ended. When I reached the hospital, Samantha was already there, mascara smudged and clutching Michael's ring like it was holy. She fell into my arms sobbing, and for a moment I believed her. We were just two women who loved the same man in different ways, bound together in loss. But funerals have a way of peeling back veneers. Michael would have scoffed at the $10,000 casket she ordered the string quartet, the designer flowers. My son had wanted simplicity, but Samantha wanted a performance. Michael deserves the best, she insisted. What he deserved was to be remembered for his laugh, his terrible puns, and his steady kindness. But Samantha's checkbook spoke louder than my protests. The will reading 2 weeks later was the turning point. Samantha clearly believed she would inherit everything: the house, the accounts, the life insurance. Instead, the lawyer read Michael's words, the house, at 847 Maple Drive, to his mother, Dorothy Mitchell. Life insurance and retirement split equally between his wife and his mother. Samantha's shock was so raw it almost made me pity her. Almost. She sputtered about mistakes, about conversations with Michael that didn't exist. But the paperwork was signed, notarized, and binding. Michael had quietly changed it 6 weeks before his death. I didn't know why. Not yet. 3 months later, a courier arrived at my garden gate with a thick envelope. A lawsuit, undue influence, fraud, manipulation. According to Samantha's attorney, I had taken advantage of Michael's diabetes diagnosis, preying on his fears to poison him against his wife. It was outrageous, but the timing was suspicious enough to raise questions. My lawyer, James Worthington, an old family friend, told me plainly, "They don't need to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, Dorothy. Just enough to tip the scales." For a moment, I considered giving up. Grief makes you tired, makes you want the easy road. But then came Tyler. Tyler was my neighbor's teenage grandson, always buzzing his drone overhead, despite everyone's complaints. One afternoon, he showed up on my porch, awkward and nervous, holding his phone. "I think you need to see this." What I saw nearly stopped my heart. Samantha, the night before Michael's funeral in my backyard, locked in the arms of a man who was most definitely not her dead husband. The timestamp, 11:47 p.m., the man Carlos Rodriguez, an insurance agent from town. Suddenly, the pieces snapped together. The extravagant funeral, the assumption of inheritance, the fury at the will. Samantha hadn't just been unlucky. She had been planning. And Carlos Rodriguez, with his failing business and family in another town, was the perfect accomplice. I told Tyler to back up the video everywhere he could. That shaky drone footage would become my shield, my sword, and eventually Samantha's undoing. The first time I played the video in court, there was a collective intake of breath. Even Judge Morrison adjusted his glasses and leaned forward as the grainy night vision footage flickered across the courtroom's monitor. There she was, my daughter-in-law, less than 14 hours before we laid Michael to rest, kissing another man in my backyard, like a teenager caught breaking curfew. Samantha's face, once powdered and perfect, turned ashen. Her lawyer, Patricia Grimm, tried to object, but it was too late. The jury had seen it, and you can't unsee betrayal. But let me take you back to the weeks before that moment, because the truth didn't fall into my lap all at once. Tyler's video was just the start. Once I had that piece of evidence, I began pulling on threads I hadn't realized were there. Michael, my son, had been cautious to a fault, but in the months before his death, he had become even more meticulous. I found out he had canceled a large insurance policy Samantha had urged him to keep, replacing it with a smaller one that split benefits between the two of us. He had changed his will, leaving me the house. And he had started recording financial conversations in his journal. The journal I found in his desk drawer, weeks after the funeral. The entries were haunting in their simplicity. Notes about Samantha meeting with Carlos under the guise of insurance consultations. Concerns about her unusual spending habits, unexplained charges evenings, when she came home late and dismissive. The last entry, dated 6 weeks before the accident, read, "Changed my will today. Don't trust Samantha. Mom will make sure Chloe is okay if anything happens to me." My son had seen what I hadn't. He had tried to protect me even from the grave. Meanwhile, Samantha ramped up her attacks. Court filings arrived weekly, each one nastier than the last. She claimed I had brainwashed Michael against her. She claimed I was senile, unfit to manage property. She even alleged I'd coerced him by threatening to cut him off from family support, whatever that meant. Patricia Grimm relished every opportunity to paint me as a villain. Mrs. Mitchell is a lonely old woman who couldn't stand losing control of her son. She declared, her voice echoing in the courtroom. It stung not because it was true, but because I could see how easily people might believe it. Then came the night I caught Samantha in her own web. I hadn't been sleeping much. Grief and anxiety made the nights long. At 2:30 a.m., I sat scrolling through Facebook numb until I saw a photo Samantha had posted months earlier, a vacation shot at a Mexican resort. The date was December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. That was the year she told me Michael was too tired for family gatherings, that they needed quiet time. Yet there she was, cocktail in hand, Carlos by her side in the background, reflection of a mirror behind the bar. I printed the photo and tucked it into my growing file. Bank statements showed $8,000 spent at that resort charged to an account I knew wasn't Michael's. The account belonged to Samantha. The woman who claimed she was left destitute had been living extravagantly on the side with Carlos as her companion. The puzzle was no longer just about inheritance, it was about motive. The more evidence I gathered, the clearer the picture became. Samantha wasn't grieving. She was plotting. Michael had uncovered enough to protect me, but not enough to save himself. And Carlos Rodriguez. His name appeared on too many documents to be coincidence. He had handled Samantha's insurance consultations, advised her on estate planning, and according to one set of phone records, spoken with her twice on the night Michael died. By the time we reached the preliminary hearing, I wasn't the fragile widow Samantha expected to steamroll. I had my lawyer, James. I had Tyler's video. And I had Michael's journal. The combination was enough to halt her momentum. Judge Morrison ruled that her challenge to the will could move forward, but with serious credibility issues. Samantha's perfect image was cracking. During recess, Samantha leaned close, her breath hot against my ear, and hissed that promise. "I'm gonna leave you with nothing, you useless old hag." It should have rattled me. Instead, it steadied me, because in that moment, I knew something she didn't. The video wasn't the only weapon I had. The paper trail of lies she left behind would bury her long before she could bury me. The trial was scheduled for late September, 6 months after Michael's death. In those months, Samantha grew bolder, in public spinning tales of being the victim of a manipulative mother-in-law while privately doubling down on threats. But every lie she told became another piece of rope she'd eventually hang herself with. By the time September arrived, Samantha strutted into the courthouse like a woman walking a runway, not a widow seeking justice. Her heels clicked against the marble floors, her designer handbag dangling from her arm like a trophy. She had her entourage, too. 2 girlfriends whispering behind her. Patricia Grimm carrying folders thick with paperwork, and that practiced look of pity she wore for the cameras outside. I, on the other hand, walked in quietly, my evidence file tucked neatly in a plain manila folder. No theatrics, just truth. Tyler had agreed to testify about the drone footage, though his parents were hesitant. It could get messy. His mother warned me. Tyler, however, stood firm. "It's the right thing to do," he said, his young face set with determination. In that moment, I knew Michael would have been proud of him. The courtroom filled with spectators, neighbors, church acquaintances, even strangers drawn by the promise of scandal. Reporters sat in the back row, pens ready. Samantha loved it. I could see the sparkle in her eyes as she whispered to Patricia, clearly reveling in the attention. Opening arguments set the tone. Patricia painted Samantha as a devoted wife, cruelly betrayed by a mother-in-law who couldn't let go. According to her, Michael's sudden changes to his will were the result of emotional manipulation by me, not independent decisions. She painted me as jealous, controlling, and desperate for financial security. Then James, my lawyer, stood. He didn't raise his voice or dramatize. He simply said, "This case is not about a grieving widow. It's about a woman who betrayed her husband, manipulated finances, and attempted to seize an estate through deceit. And we will show you proof video, proof financial proof, and testimony." The first witness was Samantha herself. Patricia had clearly prepared her. Samantha cried on cue, dabbed at her eyes with tissues, and spoke about her undying love for Michael. She painted a picture of their marriage as idyllic, interrupted only by my supposed interference. "Dot never accepted me," she sobbed. "She poisoned Michael against me, and now she's trying to take everything from me." I stayed calm, hands folded in my lap, because I knew what was coming. When James cross-examined her, he was surgical. "Mrs. Mitchell, do you recognize the man in this video?" The monitor lit up with Tyler's drone footage. Samantha's eyes darted, her jaw tightened, but she forced a smile. "That's a friend. He was comforting me in a time of grief." James didn't flinch. "The timestamp shows this was taken at 11:47 p.m. the night before your husband's funeral. Were you seeking comfort or intimacy?" Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Patricia objected, but the damage was done. Samantha's composure cracked. Next came Tyler. Nervous but steady, he explained how his drone had captured the footage while flying over the neighborhood. Patricia tried to rattle him, accusing him of spying, but Tyler's simple honesty won over the room. "I wasn't looking for anything. I just saw what I saw. And I thought Mrs. Mitchell should know." Then, James presented Michael's journal. Each entry was projected for the court to see Michael's neat handwriting spelling out his doubts and fears. The final note, the one where he wrote, "Don't trust Samantha. Mom will make sure Chloe is okay," landed like a hammer blow. Chloe, my granddaughter, the child who, until that moment, had been mostly shielded from the proceedings. Michael's words reframed everything, not just about inheritance, but about guardianship, legacy, and trust. For the first time, Samantha faltered completely. Her glossed lips trembled, her eyes narrowed, and her mask slipped. She wasn't the grieving widow anymore, she was the woman exposed. And I hadn't even played the final piece of evidence yet. The courtroom was so quiet, you could hear the buzz of the fluorescent lights. Samantha's facade was crumbling, her carefully curated image slipping through her fingers. Patricia shuffled her papers with more force than necessary, trying to recover the rhythm of their defense. But James wasn't done. He stood, his voice steady, commanding. Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff would like to submit additional evidence, financial records obtained through subpoena. The clerk wheeled in a cart stacked with binders. Patricia's head snapped around. She hadn't expected this. Samantha's face paled. James opened one binder and handed copies to the jury. These are wire transfers made from Samantha Mitchell's joint account with my client's late son, totaling $148,000 over the course of 8 months. The recipient, Carlos Rodriguez. A collective gasp swept through the room. Samantha pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, eyes darting toward Carlos, who sat nervously in the gallery. James pressed forward, his tone precise. Mr. Rodriguez is not just an insurance agent. He is the very agent who handled Mr. Mitchell's life insurance policy, the same policy that Mrs. Mitchell attempted to claim in full despite being listed as only a partial beneficiary. Patricia jumped to her feet. Objection. This is circumstantial, but Judge Alvarez cut her off. Overruled. The jury will hear this. Samantha's glossed smile was gone now, replaced by fury, barely hidden beneath her foundation. Her fingers gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. And then James revealed the final nail. Your Honor, this is an audio recording, time-stamped 2 weeks before Mr. Mitchell's death, captured during a phone call between Mrs. Mitchell and Mr. Rodriguez. With the court's permission, we'd like to play it now. The speakers crackled. Samantha's voice filled the room, sharp and unmistakable. Michael doesn't have much time. Once it's over, Carlos will finally have what we need. I just need his mother out of the way. The room erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously, whispers buzzed from every corner, and Samantha's mask shattered completely. She lunged toward the playback device, her composure gone screaming. That's a lie. That's fake. You can't do this to me. The bailiff had to step forward to restrain her as Patricia buried her face in her hands. For the first time since Michael's death, I felt something sharp and rare pierce the weight of grief. Not joy, not triumph, but vindication. My son's voice had been heard, his truth had been honored. And Samantha. She was finished. The final days of this trial moved like a storm breaking apart, loud, chaotic, impossible to ignore. Samantha arrived each morning, disheveled, her perfect hair fraying her once confident stride, reduced to hurried, anxious steps. The cameras outside no longer adored her. Reporters shouted accusations instead of compliments. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood with the verdict in hand. We, the jury, find in favor of the defendant, Mrs. Dorothy Mitchell. The words washed over me like a tide. Relief. Vindication. A quiet ache of grief, too, because no verdict could bring Michael back. But justice at least had been served. Judge Alvarez's voice rang out. The will stands as written. All accusations of coercion are dismissed. Furthermore, evidence of potential insurance fraud and conspiracy will be referred to the district attorney's office for further investigation. That last line hit Samantha like a bullet. Her head jerked toward Patricia, eyes wild. Carlos, seated at the back, slunk out before anyone could stop him. Reporters surged toward the aisle, their questions sharp as knives. Samantha tried to rise to storm out with dignity, but the bailiff was already there. Mrs. Mitchell, you'll need to remain seated. Her voice cracked as she spat at me across the courtroom. You ruined me, you bitter old witch. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The truth had answered for me. Outside, the autumn air felt crisp, almost cleansing. Tyler and his parents stood waiting, his drone case in hand. We did it, he said shyly, though the pride in his eyes was unmistakable. I hugged him. No, you did it. You helped save your neighbor and you honored Michael without even knowing him. That's something you'll carry for the rest of your life. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen, the house quiet. Michael's picture rested on the mantel, his smile frozen in time. I whispered, "It's over, sweetheart. She can't hurt us anymore." For the first time since that 2:17 a.m. phone call, I slept without waking in a sweat, without the weight of fear pressing on my chest. Justice had been served, and though grief would always remain, it no longer carried the taste of bitterness. It carried instead the faint, steady flavor of peace. The trial had ended, But life afterward unfolded slowly, almost cautiously, as though the house itself needed time to exhale. For weeks I woke expecting subpoenas, fresh threats, Samantha's shadow stretching back across my porch. But no papers came, no phone calls, only silence, her silence. The district attorney had moved quickly. Samantha and Carlos were indicted on fraud charges within a month. Her frozen accounts, her designer clothes, pawned for legal fees, it all made the evening news. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Watching her unravel from a distance was enough. Meanwhile, Chloe began spending more time with me. At first she arrived stiff, her backpack clutched like a shield. Samantha had poisoned her against me for years, filling her ears with lies about the controlling grandmother. But children sense truth. They feel it. And slowly Chloe relaxed. She started drawing at the kitchen table after school, curling on the couch with my old quilt, even asking for my stories about Michael. The first time she laughed, a real bubbling laugh, was over burnt cookies. I'd left them in too long, distracted by the phone. "Grandma," she giggled. "You're worse than Dad ever was." My throat tightened, but I laughed with her. Because in that moment, the house didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt alive. I took small steps back into the world. I joined a book club at the library, started volunteering at the food pantry, even planted marigolds along the fence line. Tyler came by often proud to show off his latest drone tricks. He'd earned himself a reputation in the neighborhood, not as a nuisance anymore, but as a hero. Grief never disappeared, of course. Some nights I still reached across the bed expecting to find Michael as a boy, his voice on the phone, his laugh echoing through the hallway. But those moments no longer broke me. They reminded me. And as the first frost of winter settled in, I found myself writing again. Letters to Michael, journals about Chloe, pages of gratitude for neighbors, for unexpected allies, for the sheer stubborn resilience of an old woman no one thought could win. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was rebuilding, and this time the foundation was mine alone. Winter thawed into spring, and with it something inside me thawed too. The house that once felt like a battleground became a sanctuary again. Morning sunlight streamed through the curtains. Michael used to tug open Chloe's. Laughter filled the kitchen, and even the creaky old stairs sounded less like ghosts, and more like memories. One afternoon, Chloe sat across from me at the table sketching, with the same intensity her father once had when fixing an engine. She looked up suddenly. "Grandma, can I live here more often?" The question caught in my throat. Her mother's trial still loomed, custody hearings were pending, and the system would have its say. But in Chloe's eyes, I saw a longing that no court order could erase. "I'll always make room for you here," I said softly. She nodded, as though she'd already known the answer. Tyler stopped by that evening, with his drone buzzing overhead, his grin wide as ever. He'd become family in his own right, proof that heroes don't always wear badges. They sometimes wear baggy hoodies and carry too many spare batteries. He caught sight of Chloe waving from the porch and steered his drone into a playful dive, making her squeal with delight. Life wasn't perfect. I still missed Michael every day. I still woke some nights to the echo of courtroom battles or Samantha's venomous whisper. But those shadows no longer ruled me. They were just chapters in a book I'd already turned the page on. And maybe that was the greatest victory of all. Not just winning the legal fight. Not just securing the house. But reclaiming myself. If you followed me this far, thank you. Stories like mine aren't just about betrayal or justice. They're about resilience. About finding strength when the people you trusted most strip it away. So if you've ever felt small, forgotten, or dismissed, remember this: you are stronger than you know. Don't let anyone write your ending for you. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps keep stories like mine alive. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what battles have you overcome?